Hello everybody, welcome to another True review. I am of course True, your Million G gamer, and this is Spiral Splatter on the Xbox One. It is once again published by Sometimes You and developed by the fantastic name. I really love some of these indie studio names. They're called Neon Chimp Games, and it's priced again at a very reasonable £3.99. But is it any good? Is it worth your hard-earned cash? Well, I'll give you the game description first of all. It describes itself as Spiral Splatter is a brain-bending arcade puzzle game that will push your hand-eye coordination to the limits with non-stop mind-boggling puzzles. Put your problem-solving skills to the test as you navigate over 100 levels and 11 different stages full of perplexing puzzles. Watch out for moving obstacles as you maneuver through each level. Think fast. If you're too slow, the ghosts may catch up to you. Hustle to reach the finish line before your time is up. Each stage of gameplay adds a new challenge with an ever-increasing difficulty. Don't be fooled by the appearances. Spiral Splatter will stump even the most adept puzzle game aficionado. Stay calm, relax, and see if you can take on Spiral Splatter. It features over 100 levels, 11 unique stages with new challenges on each one, colourful and clean graphics, and challenging gameplay. So is that true? Well, best way I can describe Spiral Splatter is you imagine the old shaky hand games that you used to be able to get, and you probably can still get. You know, the ones where you have a wire and you have a rod on a hook and on a hoop rather, and you have to lead it around the wire without touching it. Otherwise, you set off a buzzer, or in some like kind of fairground attractions, you get like a mild electric shock, something to that effect. You probably all know the kind of thing that I'm talking about. That is pretty much Spiral Splatter in a nutshell. You control a disc and you have to negotiate the maze or the level, which is all on one screen every time, without touching anything, without touching any walls, without touching any bullets, without touching any other obstacles it may throw in your way, because on doing so it just ends up in instant death and you're sent back to the beginning of the level, or if there's a checkpoint on the level, you get sent back to the last checkpoint that you passed. And that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. So how it describes itself as a puzzle game, I wouldn't really say it's a puzzle game, because probably the only thing that can amount to a puzzle is on certain levels you may have to work out the sequence that you have to go on certain switches. But I mentioned this again in a few of these reviews recently from games that have been published by Sometimes You, that calling them puzzles is probably the loosest, in the very, very loosest term of the word, because they're not really that brain busting as the description of the game describes to you. But is it fun? Well, let's go into that in a moment. And as you can see on the screen, the graphics are pretty simplistic, but it describes the graphics as clean, and they are clean. I think this is probably one of the best ways they could have depicted a game such as this. It's clean, it's crystal clear, you can see all the walls, you can see everything you need to see to avoid the damage. So yeah, the graphics are very basic, but for this kind of title they do their job and they work absolutely perfectly. Moving on to the music, well, there's not an awful lot of music going on really. It's just standard fare. I mean, you can hear it playing at the moment. I'll just stay quiet for a few minutes. Well, a few seconds anyway, but you get the gist. That's the kind of thing you're going to get from it. There's not an awful lot of music there, and you do get the what becomes very annoying death explosion when you hit a wall, which you'll be doing very, very, very frequently, because this game is it's not difficult, but it requires a little bit of knack to get into it. So we'll turn to that next. The actual gameplay. How does it play? Well, it controls well, but I will stress this: if you have a pad which has a drift on it, which a lot of us do, because honestly a bugbear of mine in gaming is that pads today cost the earth and are manufactured to a very poor standard. If you've got a pad with drift, you basically I wouldn't advise using the pad at all, because this requires pretty precise, accurate control. Other than direct control with the left stick to negotiate the disc, you do have a button to accelerate the disc as well, which you need to use if you're trying to get the full achievements on this, because it uses a star system which is solely based on time, not number of deaths, where you have to beat each level within a required time rate. And some of them are very, very tight and require no margin for error whatsoever, while some of them are bizarrely, very, very lenient. There is a checkpoint system in the game where certain of the longer tracks do have like a checkered flag line, which if you pass it, if you die, you will restart from there. But to be honest with you, if you are going for the 3 stars and going for all the full 1000 gamer score on this, the checkpoints aren't going to be any help to you, because usually if you get sent back to a checkpoint, it doesn't unfortunately reset the time to the point where you passed it. So you're definitely not going to get to the finish line within the 3-star required time frame. So annoyingly, there's not a quick restart feature, which is what I always like to see in puzzle games such as this. Just a single button press where you can instantly restart the level, but this one requires you to actually pause the game and go into a menu. Unfortunately, it's not a big inconvenience, but it's something that could have been improved slightly, especially for the amount of times you will die and will want to restart the level, which leads on to the game's issues. Now, 2 issues with the game. Mainly, the hit detection of you dying when you hit a wall is pretty good for the most part of the game, but unfortunately, anything that's a curve or a flat surface, the wall of a square, is fine. But the corner, or if it's just a straight line, the actual point of the line, the hitboxes on those tend to be very, very sensitive, and a lot of deaths when you're going around corners such as that are, I feel anyway, from playing this extensively, and not your fault. The hit detection needs to be toned in a little bit there. It's kind of like there's a buffer zone, like an invisible death zone in front of those. It's not massive, but when you're whizzing around at 100 miles an hour trying to get that 3-star sign, you need to take these corners pretty tight. So obviously hitting an invisible death wall, even if it's only a millimeter thick, shouldn't be there really. You either hit the wall or you don't hit the wall. That needs sorting out, in my opinion. There's also an issue with a few levels which rears its ugly head later on, especially one stage in particular. I think it was in World 8 or 9, where switches get introduced, where you have to press a switch which starts something moving on the level. Now, with the restart feature, when you pause and go into and assess it to restart the level, sometimes the switches don't reset properly. So things are already moving, and it's really annoying, and a lot of the time it requires you to fully exit the game and go back into the level select, which is extremely slow to do compared to just restarting from the menu there. So that's a bit of annoyance really as well, but that's something that can be sorted out through a patch, hopefully, if they take note of that and enough people raise their awareness of this problem. But other than that, there's nothing really else to report a problem with. In terms of level progression, it starts off very simple, of you just going from A to B. Like I say, then switches get introduced where you have to turn electrified barriers off. There's a whole world devoted to you have to not only get the 3-star time, you also have to beat a ghost that the developers have put in there, so you have to have like a mini race there. There's switches to press, there's time buttons, which obviously you deactivate a gate and it's got so long to get through a certain part of the level before things move back into place. So the game does progress very, very, very nicely. There is also some levels where there's gun turrets which are firing bullets all over the shop, which are absolute pain in the backside. And again, the reset problem rears its ugly head there as well, because it doesn't actually, if anything's moving in the level to start off with, when you hit reset, it doesn't actually reset them back to a default position. They just basically reset to wherever they were when you hit the reset button. So sometimes you have to wait and start a run when these pieces are in alignment, so it can require precise timing of a restart just so you can have a legitimate run and a legitimate attempt to reach the 3 stars. So I would love to see, if they do patch the game at any point, that a default start position is put in place, so when you do hit restart, you restart from the exact same moment, the exact same millisecond each and every time you hit that restart button. That would improve things immensely and cut down on frustration for the player. But yeah, overall, Spiral Splatter is a very fun and entertaining game. The achievements are very easy to get. I mean, just there's nothing here that a little bit of practice on some of the levels will not solve here. Anybody should be able to get this full 1000 gamer score with a little bit of practice. It is just simple, basic control manipulation, just navigating the disc around the courses. There's nothing too complex here. The puzzles, like I say, if you can call them puzzles, very simplistic, and it's a very fun, and for me it was very quick, but I'd say for me it took an hour to complete. But if you need to, it could probably take you a bit longer than that, maybe 3-4 hours, depending on how quickly you gather the concept and grasp the controls. But there's nothing difficult here for a 1000 gamer score for all you achievement hunters out there. So I'm going to give Spiral Splatter a definite buy. It's a nice, cheap and cheerful title once again, and this is the best one so far that Sometimes You have actually released. I've got a couple more Sometimes You games coming up now in the next few days, so will they be as good as this one? Who knows, you'll have to wait and find out. But in the meantime, this is a definite buy. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.